Over the past 2 years, Steve Lacy has gone from being a relatively niche artist to an international megastar. He's 12x'd his monthly listeners on Spotify alone, gained a Billboard #1 hit single, and sold out a national tour. While to some it may seem like an explosive, unforeseen blow-up, that is far from the case. And today, I'll be looking into and explaining the story of Steve Lacy. Steve, whose full name is Steve Thomas Lacy Moya, grew up in Compton, California, where he and his sisters were raised primarily by their mother, Valerie Lacy, and later stepfather. His biological father wasn't very present in his life and visited on special occasions such as birthdays or holidays to give gifts until he passed away when Steve was 10. Growing up, Steve was extremely sheltered as his mother wanted to protect him from the streets. He attended private school from kinder to 6th grade, was heavily involved in the Christian church, and only participated in activities his mother would allow. I couldn't really play in the front yard. I couldn't do a lot of things. I couldn't hang out. I never had neighborhood friends. I never could go to all the parks my friends would go to. I didn't really get to leave. I got to leave, but I didn't really get to branch out on my own, Steve said in an interview with ID. Before entering his teenage years, Steve developed an intense obsession with the game Guitar Hero 3: Legends of Rock. It's a music rhythm game that mimics playing an actual guitar. He became so good at the game that he could play along in another room and still achieve a perfect score. And realizing his passion for the instrument, his stepfather bought him the Squire Beginner Pack from Guitar Center at age 11. After becoming more familiar with the instrument, he began playing with others. He played in a church band where his uncle was a pastor. However, he didn't stay for long as there was no pay involved. In his freshman year of high school, despite trying to convince his mom otherwise, he attended George Washington Prep and played in the school's jazz band. Through jazz band, he befriended Jamil Bruner, who happened to be Thundercat's brother. Jamil and Steve would talk about music together, and Steve would send over what he now deems as shitty beats to Jamil. However, Jamil saw potential in Steve's talent and eventually invited him to his band's music sessions. This band was called The Internet. Together, they worked on their third studio album, Ego Death. Steve didn't realize the gravity of the work that he was doing, and he was just enjoying the process. Yet, in the end, Steve had co-produced 7 of the 12 tracks on the Grammy-nominated album. What surprised people the most was the way that Steve created his music at the time. He didn't own a vast array of expensive equipment. All he had and used was his iPhone, a pop filter, an iRig cable, and his guitar. He used GarageBand as his main app to create beats and then would mix in guitar and vocals. This setup allowed him to be mobile and create wherever he wanted. Before graduating high school, Steve had a few songs released on SoundCloud. Once he graduated from Hearts Academy in LA, he joined The Internet and toured their Ego Death album. He was able to experience performing live and learned from the band how to handle a crowd and feed off their energy. After the tour, Steve, along with his other band members, were becoming more recognized for their talent. Steve collaborated with tons of other notable artists to produce tracks such as Pride by Kendrick Lamar and Folding Clothes by J. Cole, using his signature iPhone setup. As his talent and sound became more sought out, Steve's bandmates pushed him to release his own solo work. So, in February of 2017, Steve dropped his first official project, The Steve Lacy's Demo. It's a 13-minute, 6-track iPhone-produced song series that revolves around the theme of young love and is filled with elements of funk, soul, and rock that come together to perfectly exemplify Steve's own style, which he calls plaid. Plaid, as just like the shirt, his music sounds like it has a lot going on, but nothing crashes. After the demo was released, Steve continued to create music alone, with his band, and with other artists. He enjoyed collaborating as it gave him a space to break out of his comfort zone and experiment. Living in LA, he was able to connect and form tight relationships with established artists in the industry such as DJ Dahi and Raphael Sadiq, who served as mentors to Steve. In the summer of 2018, The Internet released their second album featuring Steve titled Hive Mind. The album was well received by critics and fans who embraced the new sound, and the band soon went on to tour it internationally that fall. As these collaborations and performances persisted, Steve slowly compiled tracks for himself. He transformed his sister's vacant room into a personal studio he called Paramore Palace, but also continued to record on the road. After about 2 years of stacking music, he looked through his 50-plus pile of tracks and ideas and began to polish them to curate his first studio album, Apollo 21. It was finished in the span of 1 month and released on May 24, 2019. It was almost entirely written and produced by Steve, with only one feature and one co-write credited on the record. The album is his coming of age. Throughout the 43-minute 12-track list, he opens up and allows people to peer into his identity and current state of mind. The playful album reflects on his anxieties, bisexuality, love, lust, and range of contradicting emotions. Its sound combines facets of soul, R&B, funk, indie rock, hip-hop, and lo-fi pop. The album received generally positive reviews, however, some critics voiced their dislike for the quality, mixing, and quote-unquote unfinished feel. The album reached its peak at 160 on the US Billboard 200 and was toured internationally for his growing fan base. As time passed by, his audience became eager for more music, so in December of 2020, he released The Lo-Fis, a compilation album of old demos, leaks, and ideas. The scrappy mix served as sort of a look into the process and progress of his work. After his initial demo release, Steve began using more than just his iPhone to produce. His creative process gradually shifted as he picked up new equipment and techniques. By the time he wanted to work on his second studio album, he was feeling stuck in a creative rut. He no longer felt inspired using the same structure of making the beat, getting the riff, creating a bass line, finding the hook, filling in the blank spaces, and then finally writing the verses. So once he settled on the general theme of the album, breakup and heartbreak, he decided to restructure the song-making process. He began recording like a rapper, spitting lyrics over a beat and keeping what sticks. And the new method helped revive his creative output. However, another key factor was bringing in other people to assist with the process. One of those people was Fouché, a frequent collaborator and close friend of Steve. She co-wrote with Steve and aided in keeping him level-headed when themes seemed too difficult or unmanageable. And on July 15, 2022, Lacy released his second studio album, Gemini Rights, a 10-track record that, like a Gemini, playfully explores a mix of shifting emotions towards an ex-lover. Its genre-blending sound received praise from critics, many of which declared the album to be Steve's best and most polished. I think it's safe to say that many fans feel the same way, as the album cracked the top 10 of numerous Billboard charts and granted Steve a #1 song. Aside from its display of artistry, its exponential popularity can be attributed to the current state of social media and the music industry. Nowadays, apps that favor short-form content like TikTok or Instagram make it way easier for things to go viral. Sounds and songs often quickly become trends, and this leads to artists reaching a larger audience and gaining new fans. However, we're starting to see that this virality may not always be the best for artists. Lacy's bad habit of Gemini's rights went insane online and brought Steve a lot of attention. He then announced his Give You the World tour for the album, and it practically sold out instantly, which was great news at the time. But once the tour began, a downside of virality was uncovered. While performing Bad Habit one night, the crowd only sang the popular lines from TikTok, but they didn't know the rest of the verse and left Steve hanging. It was honestly pretty hard to watch.
I wish I knew you wanted me. I wish I knew. I wish I
The way nobody sang the next verse embarrassing as.
This awkward scenario brings up the question of the actual effect of virality on an artist's career. Like, will the new fans actually stick around to see what else the artist will release, or are they just pretending to support them because it's popular? I feel like the answer lies somewhere in the middle, but the only way we'll find out is with time. What's clear though is that a sudden explosion in popularity and fame is impactful on the artist as an individual. He's now in the spotlight and has hundreds of thousands of eyes watching. Instances that may have gone under the radar are now magnified and spread, like this moment that happened while performing in New Orleans. It was heavily talked about and shared online, but there's also an alternate angle that gives us a little more context. The camera was thrown directly at him before he then decided to break it. Steve posted a statement on the situation stating, "My show's having fun as hell. Shout out to the people not throwing disposable cameras at me and just coming to catch a vibe and connect. I had a really good time in NOLA last night. I hate that the beauty of the connection I have with so many people in the crowd gets lost when something negative happens. I don't believe I owe anyone an apology. Maybe I could have reacted better. Sure, always. I'm a student of life, but I'm a real person with real feelings and real reactions. I'm not a product or a robot. I am a human. I will continue to give you my all at these shows. Please come with respect for yourself and others. Please, thank you, love you." Although I don't know Steve personally, I'd like to think it's a one-off moment that isn't a true reflection of his character. After scouring through a lot of his content, he seems like a genuinely positive and open-minded individual. For over half a decade, he slowly carved his own path and has always done things for his love of music. He's contributed to over 105 officially released songs, working with the likes of artists such as Kali Uchis, Vampire Weekend, Mac Miller, Blood Orange, and Denzel Curry. His well-established sound continues to evolve with every new record, and I believe Steve Lacy is here to stay and will go on to have a thriving career.